All right, today we're going to be talking about developing thesis statements and supporting them in an essay. Here's our agenda for today's lecture. First, we'll talk about what a thesis is, then discuss how to create an effective one, and finally, how to use a thesis to support your position. So, what is a thesis? Thesis is one single sentence that describes your position as the writer on the topic that you're writing about. And a thesis usually appears in the end of the introduction. It has to appear in the introduction, of course, because this is providing the plan for the essay to come. So it tells the reader, okay, this is what this essay is about, and these are the pieces of information that are going to be included. The reason it comes at the end of the introduction is because you use the introduction to introduce the topic, to talk about it generally, and then you narrow your topic to, or you narrow your focus to the topic that you're going to discuss in the essay. And that's what the thesis helps you do. So what makes a thesis good, an effective thesis? First of all, it must be debatable. In other words, you must be able to disagree with it. If it's an accepted fact, it's not debatable. That means it's true. So in other words, it has to be something upon which people can differ or have a difference of opinion. Secondly, your topic or your thesis needs to be sufficiently narrow. It can't be too broad or general for the scope of your essay, because that means that you would not be able to cover enough information to prove it in an essay of the size that you have. It also needs to make a claim. Now, there are different kinds of theses. You can have a definition thesis, a thesis for value or importance, talking about whether or not something is valuable. A thesis of cause and effect, so introducing a particular cause and its after effects, and also a thesis for a solution for a particular problem. This last option is the one that you'll be doing for the final exam essay. Okay, let's talk about what makes a thesis effective in practice. We have 4 examples of theses here, and thinking about what is required to have a good thesis, look at each of these and decide, okay, is it a good thesis or not? Is it effective or no? And why? Pause the lecture now and think about each of them, and then come back and we'll talk about which is which. Okay, let's talk about each of these potential thesis statements. First, poverty is a worldwide problem. This is not effective because it's not debatable. It's true. Everybody knows that poverty exists worldwide. So this is not a debatable statement. Secondly, drug use negatively affects society and must be stopped. Well, this is debatable, but it's too broad. What kind of drug use are we talking about? What parts of society and how are they affected? How do you propose that we stop this drug use? This is far too broad. It needs to be narrowed. Thirdly, undergraduate student plagiarism is a serious and damaging problem in U.S. universities. Well, this thesis statement is sufficiently narrow, but it's not making any claim. There's no call to action. It's a serious and damaging problem, okay? So what? Why do we care? Finally, global climate change is the most important issue facing societies today and should be addressed by eliminating corporate emissions, expanding and improving public transport, and reversing desertification. Wow, you might be thinking, boy, this is a really long thesis statement, but it's actually really effective because it is debatable. Some people might disagree that it's the most important issue facing societies, and they might also disagree that these are the best ways to address it. It's sufficiently narrow because it's talking about 3 specific main points, and it makes a claim. So this is an effective thesis. Okay, so now you have a thesis. How do you support it? How do you basically craft body paragraphs to show evidence that supports your position? First of all, use that thesis as a roadmap. An effective thesis if you are able to include all the components that are required, you can use it as a roadmap to plan out your essay. Basically, when are you going to do each of the things in your claim? Nextly, you can employ your sources as support. If you take the sources that you have, you choose information from those sources that help to support what you're trying to say. You need to organize your essay around the different points that you have, not around the sources that you have, and you need to appeal to logic. Okay, so as a roadmap thesis, here we go. The statement that we decided was an effective thesis, we've color-coded it to show how you could possibly use it as a roadmap for your essay. You can see the introductory part here could be part of the introduction. So basically what you'll be talking about, why you think global climate change is important, why you think it should be addressed, using this information as a way to garner the reader's interest. The first paragraph you would discuss corporate emissions and how to eliminate them. The second paragraph would be about public transportation and how to expand and improve it. And then finally, paragraph 3 would be about desertification and how to reverse it. And then of course you would have a conclusion afterwards to restate these issues. So how do you use your sources to support your thesis? Well, you kind of go through these steps. First, you read your sources critically. Remember, we talked about engaging with the text and being an active reader, talking to the text about what is happening. Find any information that supports your position. Look for things that are going to help support what you're claiming. Decide how to use that information. Are you going to quote the author? Are you going to paraphrase the information? Make that decision. What works best for your essay? Don't just summarize a source. Use the source to explain. And then finally, let those points focus the organization. Something to think about. It's really up to you to decide what parts of your sources to use and how you want to use them to support your position. Keep in mind that this essay is about what you think, not what other people have already said about it. What those people have said supports what you are saying. Keep in mind that this isn't a summary. And don't forget your roadmap. Don't just allot one paragraph for each of your sources. Talk about what you want to prove and then use the sources as they best fit. You can use more than one source in a particular paragraph. It just depends on the information that you found. And don't forget to use parenthetical notation to indicate which source that you are using. You don't want to plagiarize.